Hello, I'm Myra Moses, and I work at NC State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, and my topic is facilitation. I know that many of you are skilled facilitators and you have lots of experience creating successful learning environments for your participants, and you have lots of tips and tricks about how to make those sessions fun and interesting and successful for your participants. So I'm going to focus on some of the questions that I typically get asked whenever I teach facilitation in person and share some of the lessons that I've learned on my facilitation journey. Currently, I get to facilitate with many different ages. I say that I get to play. I get to work with ages 6 through adults, and I get to do lots of different things with those different ages. I work with our College of Ag and Life Sciences in a program called Project YES, which stands for Youth Extension Services. In that program, I get to train college students to facilitate events with children in military families whose families are being impacted by deployments. I also get to work with our executive education group in our College of Management, and I get to facilitate events with corporate and military clients on leadership development. As I go through these questions, I'd like to challenge you to think about what your answers to the questions would be from your own perspective. I'm going to start with one of the toughest questions that I was asked a few years ago, and I didn't have a good answer at the time. Someone asked me, "What is your facilitation philosophy?" And I had no idea. And so I started thinking about it after that. I think I probably gave them some answer, but then later I started thinking, what is my real facilitation philosophy? I had been asked years ago to develop my teaching philosophy and my education philosophy. And so I started looking at whether or not my facilitation philosophy dovetailed in with my education philosophy. And I hoped that it did because I wanted to remain true to what I was doing and why I was doing it. So I started analyzing, why do I facilitate? And what do I get out of that when I do it? And what do I think I bring to the situation whenever I'm working with my learners? And so what I realized was that what I love about facilitation and why I do it is because of that moment whenever you have connected the group and they are able to do whatever it is and take that next step forward, and you get to step back and watch magic happen. And so that, I think, connected to my idea of my facilitation philosophy. It's not about me. It's about what can I do to support a group of people in doing something wonderful as they learn how to work together so that they're taking their own individual steps forward and taking a step forward as an entire group to whatever it is that they're wanting to accomplish and learn next. And so as you think about your own answer to that question of what is your individual education philosophy, I would challenge you to think about, why do you do it? Why do you keep coming back and continue to facilitate groups? What is it that you get out of it? And what is it that you bring to the situation that makes it successful? Facilitation can be exhilarating, it can be hard, it can be challenging. Every situation can be different. And so what is it that keeps you motivated to continue doing it, that connects to your beliefs about what you do? Another question that I get asked pretty often is, how did you become a facilitator? And I don't think I did. It's not like I just woke up one day and was a facilitator. I think I'm still becoming a facilitator. Early on, I did not decide that I was going to be a facilitator. It was just that different experiences in my life, starting very young, led me to situations where I facilitated. And then gradually I realized that that was a real thing and something that I could work on becoming better. And it started, I think, because I'm one of 7 kids, and where I fell kind of in the birth order, a lot of my role was to facilitate, a lot of conflict management, but to facilitate different things within the group with my siblings. And it just kind of happened naturally. And at the time, I didn't realize that I was facilitating. But looking back on it, I realized that a lot of the lessons that I have learned and used now, I learned from my siblings and still learn from them, because that type of facilitation doesn't really end. They're wonderful, but having 7 people and me being one of them, there's a lot of facilitation that has to go on to kind of make things successful for us, and we all try. And so I think that was one of my earliest times at facilitating, even though I didn't know to call it that. And then later on, I became a high school teacher, and I learned some skills there. Still didn't call it facilitation. It wasn't until I started working with college groups and we were conducting reflection in service learning classes that I started actually paying attention to it being called facilitation. and learning how to facilitate different groups and becoming intentional about it. And so I think it was those early experiences that kind of shaped my interest in it, and then learning the intentionality and theory and philosophy and practice behind it, and learning that it's a real skill, and it's a skill that I could develop and keep working on. And so I am becoming a facilitator, and I enjoy it. I think it's hard work. I think it's connected to some of the other things that I do as an educator, but I have learned to enjoy it and to look at the possibilities in it and how I can help support other people. And now it's your turn. So I would like for you to think about some of those early experiences that led to you becoming a facilitator, and how did it shape your journey to influence what you're doing now? And what are some of the things that you're doing currently that you may still be doing in order to continue becoming a facilitator? Another question that I get asked pretty often is, what is some of the best advice you have ever received about facilitation? And I don't think the advice was specifically about facilitation. It was more about connecting with people. And I'll share two examples. One is from a gentleman named Benjamin Zander. And if you're not familiar with him, I recommend that you go and check out his YouTube videos. He is a conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Youth Orchestra. And he's very energetic and very entertaining, but he has some really amazing things to say. And the piece of advice that I took from him that I try to apply to what I do with facilitation, he talks about when he had this realization, and I believe he said he was 40 when this happened. And he said that he had this realization and that it changed everything that he did. And people asked him about it. And he said that what he realized was that the conductor of an orchestra doesn't make a sound. And when he was telling this in the video, he turned around backwards and he did all of these crazy gyrations like you see on the cover of musical scores. You know, he's doing like this with his conductor's wand and different things and making all of these gestures without saying anything at all. And he said what that made him realize was that his job was to awaken possibility in others. And that's why I've titled this session, Facilitating, Building Connections and Awakening Possibility, because I think that connects to my belief about facilitation. And it's that part about helping people take that one step further, either as an individual or as an entire group. That's about awakening possibility. It's not about me. It's not about what I need to say. It's about how well can I help support others in what they're doing to take that next step, to awaken possibility in themselves, and to awaken possibility in myself about what can I do to help support other people. The second example I would like to share about advice that I've received, which I apply to what I try to do with facilitation, is from one of my nephews, Lucas. And he's my youngest sister's son. She adopted him. She started fostering him when he was 3 days old and then later adopted him. And Lucas and I get along really well. And he loves to talk to me about some of the things that he's going through. And he likes to have meetings in my car. And we get in my car and we have to lock all of the doors. And we have these serious conversations about different things that he's going through. And he asks me about things that I'm doing. And he has taught me so much. And one of the things that he taught me was when he was about 5, I was talking to him about some of my interns, and he calls them my big kids. And I told him, I said, I work with my big kids so that they can go out and help kids all over the country. And he goes, oh, like you help me. And I said, well, I hope that I help you, but yes, like that, so that they can talk to kids about things that they're going through and they have a safe person to talk to about whatever they want to. And he said, okay. I said, well, do you have advice that I could tell my big kids about how to help other kids all over the country? And without pausing a single second, he responded very quickly. He said 2 things. He said, number 1, love them. Number 2, listen to them. Lucas was right. It's so important for people to feel that you care about them and that you will listen to them. And so that advice has been very crucial for me in everything that I do, and especially in facilitation. It's really important to listen and to pay attention to what it is that people are trying to tell you, and sometimes they don't even know how to. And I feel like it's my job to try to make that space safe for them and for me to pay attention to what it is that they're trying to tell me. My challenge to you on this one is to think about what are ways that you let your participants know that you care about them, and how do you listen to them as you're facilitating whatever activities it is that you're doing. And then for the second part, what advice have you been given in the past that has impacted how you facilitate, and how do you intentionally try to bring that in to what you do in order to become a more effective facilitator? One of my favorite questions that I get asked is, how do you know that you've succeeded as a facilitator? And I think of my high school band director whenever I answer this question. His name was John Lackey Jr., and he was incredible. I had him for band starting in like the 6th or 7th grade, and then went through middle school and high school with him as my band director. He was a Marine. He had fought in the Korean War. He could play every instrument that there was, and he was a fantastic teacher and an amazing person. And he cared genuinely about all of his students. And whenever we would be playing really well in band, he had the same reaction every single time. He had the most beautiful blue eyes, and his eyes would light up. He would smile so big, and he would rub his arms. He had hair on his arms, and the hair on his arms would stand up. And he would stop the band, and he would say, "The hair on my arms is rising," and he would rub his arms like this, and he would just beam at us. And we all felt like we were amazing musicians and that we had accomplished something really special, and he made us feel that way. And really, I couldn't play. I tried to play trumpet and French horn, and I loved it because I loved him and I loved music, but music was not my strength. But I stayed in band because I loved him, and he taught me so many life lessons. And one was genuinely caring for people. And the second one was whenever I told him that I was considering becoming a teacher, his face lit up and he said, "You are going to have bridge moments and hair-raising moments." And when I asked him what he meant, he said, "You're going to have those moments where you want to jump off, and that means you want to leave education." He said, "But then you're going to have those hair-raising moments where it makes everything else worthwhile." And I knew whatever he would do whenever we were playing well, and he would rub the hair on his arms and say his hair was standing up. And it was a couple of years into teaching whenever I had that first experience with a group of 10th graders. And what happened was I realized that they were learning, and they turned to each other, and they started processing this novel that we were talking about, and it was a book about the Holocaust. But they started talking about the concepts that we had been discussing and things that I had been saying, but they got it. And they started talking to each other. And I had that moment, and I thought, this is what Mr. Lackey meant. This is a hair-raising moment. And it's when the people that you're trying to support in moving forward, they get it, and they accomplish something that sometimes they didn't think they could do. And you get the privilege of standing by and watching it happen and watching them succeed. And it can be small, it can be huge, but those moments are incredible. And for me, that's how I know when my facilitation has succeeded. When the people that I'm working with don't need me anymore. When I can step back and they do whatever it is that they're trying to do. They have connected as a group. They've gotten it individually and together, and they're going to move forward, and they start making things happen without needing me there in that moment. That is success. And for me, that is my hair-raising moment. And that's how I know I've succeeded. So now think of a hair-raising moment that you've had while you've been facilitating, and what were the things that led to that so that you know that you succeeded. Another important question that I get asked is, how do you improve? And there are several ways. One way that I think is really important is to watch other people and learn what you can from them. You have to be yourself, but you can take tidbits from other people and try them out and see if they work for you. And so I like to watch my colleagues who are facilitators. I also like to watch professional entertainers and people who tell stories and people who are doing presentations online and in the media so that I can learn tips from them as well. And also sometimes I like to watch people to learn what not to do. And so to critique it with pros and cons, things that work for them that may not work for me, but things that I can also take and try. Another thing that I think is really important in order to improve is to practice. So once you've identified those new things that you want to do, practice. and you have to practice in front of a real audience. You can practice on your own, but then you have to take it out into a real setting and practice. And so sometimes it's about letting people know and being transparent and telling your learners, hey, I'm trying this for the first time. Let me know what you think. And sometimes it's about trying it and just seeing what happens. The other thing that I try to do to help myself improve is connected to that idea of honest assessment. One of the ways that I like to do that is I think of this as being a compassionate critic to myself. And so I use a tool that I learned in total quality education when I first started teaching. Several of you may have heard of this. It's called a plus delta. It's a type of assessment that you can do. And so one way to do this is to just start with a plus and always start here. All too often after we've done something, we start analyzing what we did wrong and what we need to change and what messed up. But don't. Start with what you did that worked well and start here with your pluses. And so you can just do this in your mind, or you can write it down. You can have someone else give you a plus delta after the fact. But starting with the plus, and this is where you list every single thing that you did right. And so after this presentation, I will do a plus delta and I'll say, okay, what do I think I did well? What worked? And then once you have listed everything that went well, then you look at the deltas. And delta, this is the symbol for change. So it's about what would you change if you were going to do it over again. It's not about what went wrong. What did you mess up? It's about what would you change. You list the things that you would change. And then if you want to set goals from this, you can say, okay, what did I do well that I want to do more of? What would I change that I need to work on and figure out how to change? What are things that you do that help you improve? And what are things that you might start trying to do that would help you improve as you go forward in order to become a more effective facilitator? For my last facilitation challenge, I would like to challenge you to think about how are you going to intentionally hone your craft to become a more effective facilitator. What skills can you enhance? What skills can you learn? What things from this presentation could you take away and apply to what you're already doing so that you become a better facilitator? And so how do you hone your craft to become better at building connections between yourself and your participants in order to awaken possibilities so that everybody can advance towards becoming whatever it is that they're wanting to become and to learn whatever it is that you're trying to help them learn. So how can you, as a facilitator, build those connections in order to awaken possibilities and advance together? I want to thank you for your interest, and I appreciate you taking time to watch this presentation, and I wish you well as you continue your facilitation journey.